So the last topic for the autonomic nervous system as its own unit would be going over a reflex. So this is integrating sensory and motor information to um, carry out a automatic, but also autonomic process. So you've seen automatic re responses, like the knee-jerk reflex. That's a reflex. This is that same kind of idea. Of a reflex, but using the autonomic nervous system. So we are usually not even aware these reflexes are happening. You have seen the basics of this. Well, I talked about the fact that autonomic reflexes exist when I introduced reflexes. Here is what kind of a simplified diagram of that reflex looks like. Looks very similar in terms of this anatomy to a somatic reflex. Couldn't necessarily tell the difference except for one key detail. So the autonomic ganglia, right? The ganglion, singular, is only present in the autonomic motor division. So that's down here. Um, what that means is that the autonomic reflexes are always polysynaptic because they always have that synapse in the motor division. So that's from like this image, that's the only thing that would tell you this is an autonomic reflex. We don't know what that receptor organ is. We don't know what the target cell is from this image. Those would differ, but we just don't have that in this picture. Um, in this case, this is a cranial reflex, but autonomic could be, um, I'm sorry, this is a spinal reflex, spinal cord, but they also could be cranial. So we could have integration in the brainstem. That's actually very common for autonomic reflexes. Okay, so for the autonomic reflexes, there is some detail we could add in here to um, make it apply to autonomic nervous system. So first of all, where is the sensory information coming from? That's the first question I have for you. Um, well, it's coming from it's visceral autonomic information. So it's coming from sensor receptors in the viscera. This receptor organ might be located in the heart or the digestive system, something like that. The stimulus is something like stretch of internal organs, blood vessels, change of beating of the heart, which causes a pressure difference. Those are always going to be types of interoceptors. So within the body, interoceptors could also be somatic. There's examples of that. But autonomic sensory information is always interoceptors. Internal stimulus. Not all internal stimuli are autonomic. Okay. So then we've got the sensory neuron. This is still in the dorsal root ganglia, just like all sensory information is, unless it's a cranial reflex, in which case it's just a little different. Um, Integration, or the integrating center. Here, there's also an extra synapse within the integrating center. Um, Even without that, though, we still always have two neurons for the motor division, so always polysynaptic. Our output signal then is the motor, preganglionic and postganglionic, also called ganglionic neuron. And then our target cell is going to be what? With some examples of what the target cell could be a part of what organ. So just like our sensor, it could be heart, intestines, or other digestive organ, smooth muscle, glands. I'm actually going to add smooth muscle up here because that's one we've seen and will see again. Response then would be, change in heart rate, change in digestion, smooth muscle contraction, relaxation, release of some glandular fluid. Okay, that's the basics. We'll see a couple examples with the special senses, but I want to do one example here now. So here's an example of an autonomic reflex. This is going to be regulation of heart rate. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, regulation of heart rate, but we're actually regulating blood pressure. Blood pressure is a regulated variable. Heart rate is not. So it's going to be via a change in heart rate. Heart rate can dynamically change to meet the body's demands and also to maintain blood pressure. Higher heart rate, it creates a higher pressure in the body. Okay, so let's go through this. We're going to start with the stimulus being high blood pressure. So I'm going to draw that right here. High blood pressure can exist throughout the entire body, but a main place where high blood pressure is detected is right near the heart. So there is detectors in the carotid artery, that the carotid artery is right here. It is a blood vessel that goes to the brain. So a very important blood vessel. We really want to maintain blood flow to the brain. So there are baroreceptors located within the carotid artery that detect pressure. Baroreceptors are a type of mechanoreceptor that detect pressure, like a barometer. So in this case, we're detecting high blood pressure. They would detect low as well. They can detect pressure changes and when, yeah. So high blood pressure detected in this case. The sensory neuron is going to carry the information to the brain. This is a cranial nerve involved here going to the brainstem. So we've got sensory neuron is our input signal. I'm showing one neuron here, but it really is a cranial nerve, many axons. Integrator, right? Brainstem is our integrator, receives information about blood pressure and determines whether it is abnormal. Is it too high? Is it too low? Specifically the medulla in this case. Medulla is very important for regulation of well, altering heart rate. The output signal then, so let's say blood pressure is too high, like I said in this case, is going to send information to the heart. So this is our motor neuron. It's a nerve, also a cranial nerve. In this case, I'm actually going to name it, it's the vagus nerve. So this is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. You know the parasympathetic nervous system is rest and digest. It lowers heart rate. So this is actually seeing what we just learned about, right, with parasympathetic nervous system. High blood pressure, when that happens, we want to lower heart rate to decrease that pressure. Vagus nerve is the nerve that controls that. So the vagus nerve sends a signal to the heart, right? I'm just going to label the heart, even though I think you know what that was. There are special nodes here that we'll talk about in the spring that regulate heart rate. So we're going to, in this case, if we have an increase in blood pressure, we're going to decrease heart rate.